welcome to the Amy Edwards Show. I'm your host, Amy Edwards. We are here to better our lives in the most efficient way possible through better habits and mindsets. And I am so excited about today's guest. I know I say that every time, but I literally mean it. Ginger Hansen is joining us today. Ginger has a bachelor's in health administration, a master's in Oriental medicine. She is a board certified and licensed practitioner of Chinese medicine, a pain and gut health expert, a whole foods nutritionist, and a certified master level NLP coach, which I'm so excited about. I'm so into that. With over a decade of hands-on clinical experience transforming lives. I was so excited to meet you, Ginger, when we met like about a month ago. So thank you for being here today and stepping up and joining.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It's always a pleasure to be in your presence.
Well,
and
that's
I'm
so
grateful
kind.
to be here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be in your presence. You were just shining. I hadn't met you or even looked at your Instagram or anything when we met, and we all went to dinner at, where do we go? Casa de Luz, of course, which is magical in itself. And when you walked up, I was like, oh, she's a shining, bright star. I was like excited.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, when I met Justin, I thought he was such an amazing and humble guy, and he had such great energy. And he was telling me about his lady, and I knew she was going to be an amazing lady just because of who he is.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
That's a testament to him, and I'm glad I could live up to that. So thank you so much. And I'm just excited to talk with you because even as we were eating and talking, I wasn't feeling good that day. And so we started talking a little bit about what you do, and I just got more and more interested, and you were so knowledgeable. And so I know that you are all about helping other people, but I know that it originated with you and helping yourself. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about your story and how you got, like what your path was to what you're doing now.
Yes. When I was younger, I never would have imagined of doing what I do today because I shut down my intuition. I shut down my emotional side. I was a Pisces and I always wanted to be headstrong. And so I just shut down that side of myself that was connected to infinite intelligence, I feel like. And so I was a refugee, a boat refugee from Vietnam, and I grew up in Switzerland where we got asylum. And so when I was 15, my family sent me to the United States to do a year abroad. I learned English, and I also picked up 40 to 50 pounds extra. I literally...
Way to go, U.S.
Yeah, I literally stopped weighing myself at 169 because I was afraid of that 170 because it had, it meant something to me. I made it mean something. Mm-hmm. And...
What did you think about the U.S. before you came here? Like, did you have I'm sure you had a lot of preconceived ideas. And where did you go?
I went to California, Northern California, to a little town called Stockton. Okay. It's about an hour away from Sacramento. Mm-hmm. And it was always a dream to come to the United States. I had visited before, and I loved California. I love the palm trees. I love Miami. I love the beaches. We don't have beaches. We don't really have palm trees. And so it was a dream of mine to always come to the United States. And I have a lot of family that lives in the United States. And so we were the only family members that ended up in Switzerland. And so we would come visit as children. And, we listen to American music, we watch American movies, and English sounded like such a cool language to speak. And so it's always been a dream of mine to actually move to the United States. And so when that opportunity came up, I was like, yes, let's do it.
And then you started eating when you got here.
And then I started eating American food. Mm-hmm. And so there was a switch, right? In Switzerland, my mom was the one that was in charge of the kitchen, of nutrition. And so I ate a lot of home-cooked meals, Vietnamese food. And then at school, we would eat relatively healthy food like salads and, healthier sandwiches with maybe less gluten, right, than in the United States, maybe less processed. And so I never had any weight struggles when, up to that point of moving to the United States. And when I moved here, I lived with a family that, the parents worked a lot. Mm-hmm. And they were preoccupied with their work, so they didn't really spend a lot of time cooking for the family. And so we would end up, ordering out. We would go to fast food places, and we would go to McDonald's and Taco Bell, things that I had never eaten before.
I'm surprised it didn't make you kind of sick, like right off the bat.
I loved it.
You loved it.
I loved the fruit Cheerios with 2% milk and for breakfast. And, the food that was at school was mostly processed, instant noodles and, iceberg lettuce salad with a couple of grape tomatoes and ranch dressing and a lot of candy. And I actually enjoyed the taste of that.
Yeah, it's engineered to make us enjoy the taste
exactly.
of that. That's what they want.
Delicious.
Yeah.
However, I started noticing that I wouldn't fit my clothes anymore. But at that point, I was already addicted to that food.
Which is what they're doing to it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is the whole idea behind it.
Exactly.
You called, in one of your things that I was reading in preparation, you called your family, or maybe it was just like the environments that you were in, health illiterate. And so did that mean for food too, or did that mean more like in regards to health?
Yes, in regards to health, but health illiterate as in, I believe that health starts with nutrition. It starts with the mindset of nutrition, right? And so I grew up in an environment where my mom was busy working. Both of my parents worked full time growing up. My mom didn't really have the resources or the time to, research and Google. Maybe we didn't have some of these resources at the time, but she wasn't concerned about, how to help herself or help her family. It was just not something that was in her consciousness at all. So we grew up eating, the foods that she grew up eating, plus whatever was available in Switzerland at the time.
Yeah.
And so it was more of a survival kind of
Same
way
with
of living.
mine. My parents were older. They were like children of the 50s. And so my mom would bust out canned goods. She would put Spam in my macaroni and cheese, which I'm still traumatized over. But it was like putting it more in survival mode. And I had never heard that term, health illiterate. And I think a lot of people can probably resonate with that. Like, we didn't grow up with like this education around it, which I feel like is now so much more in the conversation.
Yes. It's not taught in schools.
Mm-mm.
And it's really the foundation.
Which is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Not even in med school, though, right?
What? Yeah, I guess not.
Yes.
I feel like I've heard something about that or read it on like Instagram or something, that it's not taught.
Right. So med students, I was told that they spend maybe about an hour on nutrition.
Like total
in their 4 years of education. Correct. And maybe somebody can confirm this. Right. And so, Western medicine is what I call a battlefield medicine. They're very good with traumas.
Like, what's wrong right now? Let's fix that.
Exactly. Acute conditions, infections, surgeries, right? With technology, we have access to surgeries, which can be a blessing. However, when it comes to chronic conditions, they're not really interested in curing you.
Getting to the root.
Right. They want to prescribe a medicine. And technically, when you have a chronic condition like high blood pressure or diabetes or, thyroid issues, you're going to take these meds forever until the day you die. Yeah. To basically control the symptoms.
I'm on thyroid medicine, and I feel I resisted it for a long time. I don't know why so many women are. Like, what is going on that we're all on thyroid medicine, But yeah, I resisted it for a long time because I was like, now am I in this for the rest of my life,
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry.
Yeah, thyroid conditions can be very tricky to treat. And it's a lengthier process than, let's say, a gut bowel issue, for instance, like somebody who has Crohn's. Symptomatically treating that is going to be a lot shorter than treating thyroid conditions. And generally speaking, thyroid meds are not as harmful or harsh as some of these other meds that people are taking for instance, chronic pain.
Well, so what happened in your story? So you started to have your own health issues. that went along with the weight gain?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so over time, I started taking medications. I ended up with a host of issues. I had ADHD. I started getting brain fog. I started getting chronic fatigue and just extreme exhaustion. I would say that my energy on a scale from 1 to 10 was 2 out of 10 on a daily basis. So I couldn't really function without the meds. And so I started taking meds. Yes.
Yeah.
It
Did
was
you start
so
to make the
bad.
connection about food and like what was going on with your body? Or were you just sort of like, oh no, now I'm here and this is going on?
I think maybe I did, but I rejected that idea.
Why do you think that is?
Because
I think that's common. A lot of people do.
Right. Because I thought it was woo-woo. Because I thought the purpose of eating is just to give us energy. I didn't think about the other roles that food had, right? Nutrition is helping us with our function, our day-to-day function. I like to say that the body doesn't work for free. Breathing costs us something. The heart beating, it costs us something. It costs us nutrients as well as calories, right?
Which kind of is energy when you boil it down. So you were thinking it was energy, but you were just not making that full connection, right?
Right. And I was also in denial because it was easier to take a pill than it was to take control of that thing that was making me sick.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to necessarily give up the foods that I loved.
No, they're good. They taste good.
Yes, it's the addict's brain speaking, right? And so it wasn't until my early 20s when I went back to the doctor and he said, this is what we got to do. We got to increase your meds or we need to add another medicine. And that's when I had this big aha moment. I knew that I couldn't function and my health was going to deteriorate. And I'm only 20-something. And that day I went home and I cried and I made a big decision to change my life. That I'm going to figure it out. As Marie Forleo says, everything's figure-outable. I wish I knew that back then, but I was so determined to just get to the bottom of this problem. And so I was digging, I asked Dr. Google, I checked out a bunch of books and I read them. I read Natural Cures by Kevin Trudeau. That was my first natural alternative medicine books. And I tried everything out. It was a process of trial and error. I took different supplements. I tried different foods. Eventually, I was more open to the idea that maybe my food is the problem. I went on a 3-day water fast and I got better. Chinese herbs also played a huge role in my recovery. And so I literally figured out what it is that I wanted to do in life.
And you started going to school for it and studying?
Yes.
What were you doing before that? What did you think like you were going to study?
Yes. I had a bachelor's in political science and I was on track to going to law school. And so I was studying for the LSAT. And
wow.
Like I said, I wanted to be this logical person. And so that's naturally what I went for.
Go ahead.
And I talked to my mentor, who was a professor, my poli-sci professor, my main one. And I had a conversation with my parents. And surprisingly, everybody supported me. And that was my green light to really make this huge change in my, career trajectory.
Do you think you couldn't have done it if they hadn't given you some kind of permission or been like more open to it? You think your family's approval was that important?
In the Asian culture, it's important to the children what the parents think of them and what the relatives think of them, because you don't want to, have your family lose face. And so reputation is super, super important. And back in the day, it was that important to me. Today, I've learned better. And so it's not as important.
Yeah, but when you're young, it's hard.
It's so hard.
It's so hard.
So hard. Yes, you don't know who you are. And you don't know that you get to have the opinions that you want to have. You get to do what you want to do, really, right?
Right.
And so that was definitely a recurring topic in my life, right? Pleasing my family. What do they want me to do? how do they define success? And so I wanted to become an attorney, and I wanted to make my family proud. And, you know, my parents, they sacrificed a lot to provide this opportunity for the children, and they worked hard. And I felt that it was my duty to give back to them in that way and make them proud. And I thought that the only way to make them proud was to become a medical doctor or an attorney, right? A lot of Asian parents think that those are respectable professions. And to my surprise, they supported my change of heart. And so I went for it. I applied for traditional Chinese medicine school, and I went to school and I got my credentials. And
how long did that take?
Typically, it's a 4-year process. So you have to have a bachelor's in like a science, and then 2 years for the master's.
And so what happened with your own body as you were going through this process?
It took traditional Chinese medicine school to get me to quit smoking cigarettes. Growing up in Europe.
Because it's very hard.
Yes. And I started to eat differently. I started to eat less processed foods. I started to...
Like just lifestyle changes that they talk about.
Exactly.
Like, it's like literally the stuff that we always hear that we resist doing.
Yes.
Because it doesn't happen overnight.
Yes, exactly. And also, one of the things that helped me a lot was I wanted to become a role model for my patients. Knowing what they're going through, knowing that they wanted to change their diet, knowing that they wanted to change their lifestyle. I mean, if I can't do it, how am I going to teach them to actually be empowered to change?
Ain't that the truth?
Yes.
Did you see people, you've seen people in your line of work probably that don't model that, or have you?
Yes. You know, one of the things that we did in practice was acupuncture. And so, yes, I have seen some patients that are just there to get the manual therapy, right? They just want the acupuncture to change their diabetes, or, you know, get them to, reduce or get rid of pains. And then you would invite them to have a conversation about nutrition. And some people are just not ready for it. And that's okay.
Yeah, some people are just not ready.
Yes.
And
no
matter what it is.
Right. And that doesn't mean that you can't inspire them, right? You can still bring up the conversation and see where it lands, because some people are ready. And maybe like me, they just didn't realize how powerful nutrition can be for their healing process.
I mean, it's foundational.
It is. It is. Please tell everybody.
I'm trying to tell myself too,
Yes.
because I've had to make my own changes, just because my own eating journey is not great. And I've had segments of time where I've really cleaned it up, but then I've had segments where I didn't. And then last year I realized it took Justin going to rehab and everything, but I was like, oh my God, I'm eating to cope. And I gained about 30 pounds. And I was just stunned that I was doing this to myself just in this unconscious way. So eating can take all these different forms, but it is very foundational. And I couldn't seem to get it together to just start there. And it was like an addiction. It was like my own addiction and coping mechanism. And so I had to, it took me till really now, I would say really till today. I don't think I've worn shorts even in the last year, like maybe till the last week or 3. And I mean, like, I just have started to lose it. And really, it took the mental game around it, which was getting really right in my own life. So it was not only that foundation of nutrition, but it was like that foundation of really getting right in my relationship and with myself, and honest and loving myself. And it was a slower process than I wished it would be, you know?
Yes, it's a trial and error process. And it was for me for sure.
I think it still is for me in certain ways as far as what to eat, because I've been vegan for a long time, but then I'm like, I don't get enough protein. And then I don't want to eat the protein. I certainly don't want to eat Beyond Meat or anything like that. So I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm not a fan. And so, you know, then I'm like, okay, where am I really getting my protein? And so now I'm back to meat, and then what meat, you know, like,
right.
It's just, it's this constant sort of adjustment process of tuning into how I feel too.
Yes. And so I never prescribe one specific, nutrition protocol for a patient. I let them pick, and I will guide them around that.
Are you ready to up-level your pleasure practice? I have in mind, and one of the tools that I've used is from Wands. That's WAANDS. One of my favorite items that they have is the cervix wand. It is their #1 best-selling glass pleasure wand for vaginal and anal de-armoring. That means more sensation. That means more getting in touch with your body. It's designed for cervical and G-spot stimulation, and it has helped thousands of women become more connected to themselves and their own pleasure while supporting them to heal pelvic pain through self-yoni massage. So if you are curious about getting more in touch with yourself, then I have an offer for you. You can get a discount using my code Amy Edwards, but if you use the link in the show notes, you can get 20% off from Wands. They have so many other beautiful items to choose from, with a large selection of 100% pure crystal pleasure wands. They create the most gorgeous, luxurious products that encourage you to honor your body, celebrate your sexuality, and live in pleasure, which is a big part of what we're about on this show. And yes, I use one myself. So go today to wands.com, that's WAANDS, and use the code Amy Edwards for 10% off, or use my link in the show notes for 20% off of your purchase from Wands. Again, my favorite is the cervix wand. It is trademarked and it is amazing. Take it from me. Check it all out and the reviews on wands.com. That's WAANDS.com, and use my link in the show notes for 20% off.
And so you want to get into habit change?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to get into habit change.
Habits.
I'm all about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there are two aspects of habit change around health and nutrition and fitness.
Okay.
One of them is the mental aspect, right? It's that neurologic feedback loop that we can change in order to change the habit. And I don't know if you've read Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Of course.
Such an amazing
big fan
book. Mm-hmm. And so basically what he teaches is the mental aspect of habit change. And so basically there's a cue. Let's say you want to stop, looking at your phone all the time. Mm-hmm. And generally there's a cue. You get a text.
A little hit.
A little hit of dopamine is what you're after. It's a feeling that we're after, right? And so that's basically the problem, right? And then there's the solution. The solution is basically we want a feeling. Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily want to read the text, but we want that dopamine hit, right? And so there's a craving for that dopamine hit. And usually, we want to solve that with a response, right? And that response is like, we're going to take that phone and we're going to read the text message so that we can get that dopamine hit. Mm-hmm. And so that response elicits kind of that craving satisfaction, right? And so basically, the way I guide my patients through habit change is I let them come up with their own solution. And I will guide them with certain questions that, will guide them to their own solution. Because if I tell you, hey, stop eating ABC and start doing, ABC, that is not going to land as well in comparison to you coming up with your own solution.
It's really interesting that you are looking at the habits for people and combining this direction of foundational nutrition with this mental aspect of NLP and getting reprogrammed in our mind.
Yes. Because
I don't see that a lot. That's so cool. Yes.
Yes.
It does.
Yes. And that's what it took for me to actually change. And so I find that it's the missing piece, right? Like just being a nutritionist without supporting people's behavior, it's very hard to win. Here's the second part of habit change. The second part of habit change is addressing the biochemical aspect.
Okay. And what is that exactly?
And so let's say we spend our lives eating standard American foods, right? Processed foods.
Sure. Drinking Cokes, having some Cheetos, Gotcha.
Yes. And what that creates is every time we reach for that Coke or for those Doritos, we're actually after a feeling, right? We're craving something because we're after a feeling. Because if food is not the problem, food can't be the solution. It's a feeling that we're after. We want to feel relief from our stress, for instance, right? And so
Or an escape.
we want to escape.
I think that's what it was for me last year with the eating to cope. It was like an escape.
Yeah.
I was seeking something to occupy my mind and time.
Yes.
Other than the bullshit that was going on in my life.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a coping mechanism for sure for many people. And it was for me as well. And so when we're reaching for this Coke, what's going to happen when we drink it is we're going to release these feel-good neurotransmitters like serotonin. And what happens over time if we constantly hijack these neurotransmitters?
Then we become addicted to it.
We become addicted to it because we're depleting ourselves, because we're hijacking, the building blocks.
So there's no natural way to do it. Rather, we're doing it in this way.
We're doing it in this way. We're depleting our body's reserves of neurotransmitters. And then it takes more and more and more to get that feeling.
Just like an addict.
Just like an addict's brain, basically. And so what I have learned when I was maybe 20 was that you can address it biochemically. And so, for instance, the carnivore diet can help you give your body the building blocks to build these neurotransmitters so that you feel the sense of completeness already. And there are also supplements that can do that. Usually there are two causes for that. There is a neurotransmitter deficiency, or there's a blood sugar problem, right? You can be on the blood sugar roller coaster. You can eat something sweet, and then insulin is going to be pumped out by your pancreas, taking your blood sugar down, and it's going to always overcorrect, and your blood sugar is going to dip low. And guess what's going to happen to your cravings at that low point?
They get higher?
Yes. So basically you're craving
am
again.
I going to get this right?
You're basically craving again.
Yes.
Right? Because it is craving another high. It wants to balance itself out. And so you're going to get cravings, and you're going to go for the thing that you know is going to give you this neurotransmitter release again, this feel-good neurotransmitter, like serotonin.
Yeah.
And so blood sugar imbalance is one of the causes of cravings. The other cause is basically being deficient in these neurotransmitters, and amino acids can do that for you.
Like what?
So L-glutamine, for instance, L-tyrosine, for instance, DLPA. And so when you take these neurotransmitters, you're basically giving your body the precursors or the building blocks to feel good. You're basically addressing what you're depleted in.
And setting yourself up for success.
Yes, because you're addressing the biochemical deficiency. And so when you're feeling, and what I hear my patients say most often when I start giving them these neurotransmitters is they'll feel the sense of completeness, like something that was missing that they didn't know was missing is no longer missing.
Wow. Do you take those every day?
I don't take them every day, but I have periods where I'll reset, like after the holidays or
So what does that look like? Like after the holidays, like if you've been, eating a little bit or something like that?
Yes. So there are different cravings types. So usually I do a questionnaire with my patients to figure out what they're craving. Is it blood sugar related? Is it neurotransmitter related? So basically I know what my cravings are. So I am typically a stress craver and also a crashed craver. And so for the crashed craver, what you can give them is L-tyrosine. So I'll take about 1,000 milligrams of L-tyrosine in one dosage, and that will just calm my brain down. And it will make my cravings disappear within minutes.
What other kinds of cravers are there? So you said stress and crash.
Depressed cravers.
I feel like I'm all of them.
Yes.
I'm like, that's me, that's me, that's me.
And then there's the blood sugar craver. And then there's the comfort craver.
Oh yeah, I'm that too.
Yes. So yes, it's like a personality test. You won't completely, categorize yourself in one type of cravings, but it's like you have to identify which ones are the dominant
Something
cravings
stands
types.
out.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then you go one after one, like one after another, and figure out, hey, which one do I need the most of? And what does that dosage need to be to calm my brain down? So you have to trial for dosage.
How important, how often do you do this reset? And how do you pay attention to when you need it? And I don't think I pause and do a reset. If I do, I can't remember when. But like, how do you tune in for that? And how often do you do that? And do you recommend that?
I definitely recommend it. And I do it as often as I need to do it. And sometimes that's daily for a period. And sometimes I go months or a year or two without needing it.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, I'm hyper aware of my habits, right? Because I teach it. And so I'm always trying to master myself. And so I pay attention to my nutrition, and, we have somebody that comes in a couple of times a week to prepare our food and juice for us. And that's my nutrition. And if I don't feel like eating that nutrition, I know something is off.
That's cool.
I know something is off. I know that, hey, I'll ask my husband, hey, I'm craving this and that, let's go out and eat this, for instance. Or I'll crave something sweet. And that's my cue to basically pull out my tool belt for, it's an emergency tool belt that I teach as well to patients. I help them build their tool belt so that in that scenario, if they find themselves and start becoming conscious of what's happening, as soon as they realize that, declare a breakdown, grab your tool belts. What's in that tool belt? So the cravings protocol is in that tool belt. And so start applying it.
Oh, I love that. Oh God, dang it. I had a good question, but I was listening to you. Yeah, you had recommended a reset to me too, the potato hack. And I was supposed to do it before we recorded this, and I didn't do it yet. But I want to. Yeah, because I had been feeling bad, and then I forgot because I got caught up with life, and I wasn't feeling well. And sometimes I think, too, when you're not feeling well, it's hard to stay in that habit of paying attention to your habits, which it is a habit to pay attention to your habits. So do you have any tricks for that, too? Because, I mean, it can get away from us sometimes.
Yes. Generally, it's a process of self-discovery, right? When we're in survival, we're not thinking about, hey, how can I eat a clean meal? Right?
Right.
You're dealing with things that are urgent at the moment or more important and more on the forefront of your consciousness. And so, when I work with somebody, they have to face me weekly. And so it brings their health and their
goals. A week goes by really
goals.
fast too, can I just say?
It does. Time flies, right?
Really
Especially
does.
during COVID. I don't know what happened to time. So we have a couple of tools that we build into the process. For instance, they can choose to do an accountability check-in every week. So basically what that is a form, a virtual form, and they'll basically report back to me, hey, how did you do with nutrition this week? This is how I did. What went well? This went well. Where is there room for improvement? And they'll list a couple of things, but that process makes them more aware of where they're headed, how they did this past week, how conscious they were of this whole process. And some weeks it's, a wash off, right? And other weeks they crush it. And so it's just a process of, it's that neurologic pathway that we have to hit to become more aware of what we're doing.
Absolutely.
By hitting it over and over and over again and calling it into your consciousness all the time so that it's just on the forefront.
Do you work any with them on like their mental game, like meditations or affirmations or anything like that? Or do you do that yourself?
Yes.
What's that like for you?
Yes. For my own process of...
Both. Yeah, yours. Tell me about yours.
Yes. So I have on and off worked with a lot of coaches. And so they're the ones that taught me this process. And so now what I do in the morning, as soon as I become conscious that I'm alive, right, I shift into gratitude.
So you don't look at your phone right away.
I try not to look at my phone. Like,
congratulations.
I use my phone as my alarm, but it's off. I turn it on airplane mode, so I'm not getting a bunch of, rings and dings first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
And so I will basically shift into the mindset of gratitude. And sometimes when my husband's awake, we will also share that. I will say the things that I'm grateful for, and he'll say the things that he's grateful for. And so we have a gratitude practice for the morning and evening.
I know that what I've read it was in one of Joe Dispenza's books, but he talks about immunoglobulin A that is boosted by gratitude, correct? And it does boost your immune system.
Yes.
It's proven.
Yes. It also allows you access to your creative self, right? That part that's connected to infinite intelligence. If you're stressed out, if you're having victim, mentality, you actually don't have neurologic access to that part of you that can come up with creative solutions.
It's just blocked?
It gets blocked. The neural pathways just get blocked.
Wow. And so gratitude reopens those?
Gratitude can reopen that. And and simply by a breathing exercise, for instance, can start centering you into your creative self.
Cool practice. So then what do you do? Tell me everything.
And then normally I work out. And so I'm a big fan of Solid Core, which is a Pilates studio. It's maybe the Pilates on steroids, people call it.
I haven't tried it.
Yes, let's go.
I love Pilates. Yes, I'll go. I'll go.
And
I've seen the signs. I can picture their logo in my head.
Yes. And what I love about Solid Core is that the mental aspect of it is very, very challenging. Like during the workout, it's not just a physical workout for me, it's also a mental workout. I push myself. My saying right now is I'd rather have tears come out of my eyes than give up. So I'll try to do the most challenging things in the room all the time. And I'll just work through the muscle pain. I'll just work through kind of my mental trash through that process of working out. And so I found that in the last 2 years almost that I've been a member, I've worked through so many mental trash items that I've had. I've literally just every day, my intention is to go in there and get stronger, get through the obstacle course so that my mindset can shift and get stronger and be reinforced.
And so now it is like, what difference do you see from then to now?
Well, first of all, the physical difference. I've
You
never
look
been
phenomenal.
Thank you. I've never been. This is the fittest I've ever been.
Is it?
Yes.
Well, that's encouraging because I just thought you were always like this because this is the only way I know you.
Right.
And let's tell everybody, aren't you about to turn 40 or you are 40?
Yes, I am 40.
Yeah,
I turned 40 this year.
Phenomenal.
1982.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the second thing is that I've just become resilient to other workouts. I can push through the pain, not just in my workouts, but also with work, with challenges.
Isn't that interesting?
It is very interesting how that translates to all different departments.
What do you surmise from that in like your perspective of helping people? Like what do you think of that?
It changes your perspective about what you can and can't do, right? If you can push your boundaries in one department, if you can reach success in one department, you could technically translate that to another department.
Makes sense.
Right? So for instance, if I can reach my goal, my physical health goals, things and accomplish things that I imagined impossible, that I thought were impossible in the past, what this means is, well, if I can do this, what else can I do? How about my relationship? Can I make my relationship epic? How about business? What if I started my own business? Your beliefs basically change around what's possible and what's impossible. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. Absolutely. Anytime you're bringing that confidence and that level of success and achievement, rather, probably, then it does open you up in other ways.
Right. because some of the principles that are valid for health, like Marie Forleo's, everything is figure outable. Mm-hmm. It doesn't just apply to business. It doesn't just apply to health. It doesn't just apply to fitness. It's a universal principle, mm-hmm. right? If Elon Musk, if you're watching this,
he watches the show. He texts me and is like, great with names.
When can I be part of this? Yeah. Yes. When will you interview me?
We got to find you know what? I had Ginger on. I had to bump him, but
So if he can land, a rocket ship on Mars, what else is possible?
I know. Really. Everything's figure outable.
Yes.
Yes.
And what it takes is basically tapping into our creative selves, mm-hmm. not listening what society listens to, not being a subscriber to the limitations of most people.
Mm-hmm. You're married.
I'm married.
You're married. And so how have you seen your relationship develop? How long have you been married?
I have been happily married for 6 years.
Okay.
Yes.
And so how have you seen your relationship develop? I'm just curious from a relationship perspective. And if you have any specific habits, like the gratitude thing, that's cool that you do that together.
Yes.
It's so easy to overlook that. Justin and I won't wake up at the same time. Like today he woke up too late, really, and was kind of rushing and just had kind of a bit of a bad attitude. And it was just not a good start to the day. And I had to say, I think maybe you need to get up earlier. This isn't how I want to start. I have already been up for 2 hours, but I was I don't want to feel like this, So I think you've got to really build upon those as a couple, and it's challenging.
Yes. One of the surprises about traditional Chinese medicine is that it taught me everything I needed to know about relationships.
Really?
Yes. So traditional Chinese medicine, the main principle is about the yin and the yang, creating the balance in the body, right? Too much heat and inflammation in the body is not good. Too much cold also isn't good. So you want to kind of create this harmony, because if you have too much of one or the other, they're going to throw each other off, mm-hmm. right? Create imbalance. And as that imbalance builds, eventually there's going to be death, right? The way it works in a relationship is there's a feminine and there's a masculine. And so these energies make up 100%. And so the more empowered and the more, complete each half is, the more complete the yin and the yang is in the relationship. Because it's all about balance in the relationship. If one is too dominant and is basically bossing the other one around, that's not going to work. Because if one is too dominant without the other one's permission, for instance, it's going to throw off the balance. If one is growing too fast and the other one is not, it's going to throw off the balance.
I heard something like this. I can't remember where I heard it, but it wasn't that long ago. And they were saying, and I've noticed this I have 2 divorces, so I really resonated with this, but they were saying that this exact principle that you're describing, and if you feel like you want that other person to rise to the occasion and, do a whole lot, so you start doing a whole lot. And you think, oh, now this is going to inspire them. I'm doing this up here. And this is going to inspire them to do the same up here. And they were saying, no, the relationship actually naturally balances out. So you're doing all this and they're going to come and do this. And so, it's still going to balance out, but one person is going to be doing way more. And that other person often doesn't rise to the occasion because it's naturally balancing instead. And I was like, whoa, I think I've been so caught up in that before, where I'm doing so much and thinking, okay, now this other person's going to match me. But that's not what happens. It naturally finds a balance instead.
Yes. Well, there is a little distinction here. The distinction is, are you doing things for you? Or are you doing things hoping that they will change?
Great distinction.
Right?
Yes, right.
So basically, if you're taking care of the whole family, you're doing everything. You're being superwoman. You're taking care of business. You're taking care of the household. You're taking care of nutrition. You're making sure everybody's going to the doctor when they need to go to the
I've done all
doctor.
this. Yes, yes.
Right. What that means is that you're doing all of this, but not just for you. You're not just working on your own half to be complete in your feminine essence.
Mm-hmm.
You're basically taking over the whole relationship.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And expecting for the other person to basically also do things for you.
Mm-hmm.
What I have learned is when I take care of me, when I make sure that my cup is full, I'm taking care of my fitness. I'm taking care of my mental health. I'm taking care of my emotional health. I'm taking care of my spiritual health. When I feel that I'm basically taking care of me and nothing is missing, now when I'm doing something for Ben, I'm not expecting anything in return because my cup is full, right? I'm cooking a meal for him and I'm not expecting for him to give anything back in return, really. You know, I'm going to my in-laws, to his family's house, and I'm not expecting for him to necessarily return that. I'm not keeping track in my own mind.
Right, keeping score.
Yes.
It's just not a good look.
Right. So I did this for you, and now I'm expecting for you to do this for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's gift giving. And it works really good in relationships because I want him to do the same. I only want him to give when he feels like he wants to give. It's coming from a place of abundance and not from, scarcity.
Mm-hmm. Big time. How are you on that abundance mindset? How's that evolved for you?
I've got some work to do.
Me too.
I think where I have done really, really well is in my health and my nutrition. I've turned that around quite a bit. So, back in the day, I was, we talked about this earlier. I was obese. I had all kinds of health issues. And so in working with a lot of different coaches, in investing in myself, spending time, investing my thoughts and my resources and my time into that process, I was able to master it, right? In relationship, I feel like we have an amazing marriage. I feel like we have a really, really good play on the yin and the yang because I make sure that I take care of me. And so I take care of him to a certain degree as well, but I also empower him to take care of himself. So I feel like, the abundance mindset in my marriage is very good. It's basically two completes that make up a more complete yin and yang circle. Some of the areas where I have struggled with the abundance mindset is, my relationship with my mom, for instance. I've given so much in my life to my family. Earlier we mentioned this whole, cultural expectations, feeling like you are supposed to give back to your family and make them proud the way they want to be, seen by society. And so, I feel like there's some work to be done. I feel like it's an onion that I've peeled, and I thought I was done with it. And then there's another layer that gets tripped up and that I have to work through.
Let me get to this mental trash.
Yes. Yes. How do you feel about, family dynamics and abundance?
That's a really interesting way to look at it too, because most of the time when we talk about abundance, people are strictly thinking about wealth and in money terms, right? And so my mind does tend to go there, but yeah, my family situation is different. I have my kids, my parents are both deceased, and I don't have much family. So I really keep a good mindset around my sister and making the most of the time that we've got. And so I try to connect with my kids every day. And I think mine's pretty good, but it is definitely still a work in progress. And thank you for asking that question. It's super interesting. And I think we could all probably, everybody listening could probably, tap into that and just say a little bit like, where's my abundance mindset when it comes to my family? and my friends too, like I think sometimes we can get down on ourselves around any of those things. And, just saying like, oh, just getting into the mental lack space rather than the abundant space. And it takes building that habit, and it takes consciously doing it and putting effort around it. But I mean, like one of my goals on my goal list is to have a really honest, open, and beautiful relationship with my children and with my partner. And so I read through those goals every single day, and I do try to keep that in the forefront of my mind. And that's what I'm going for.
I love it.
Mm-hmm. And I write down gratitude every day. And so I do try to, I'll often tap into that as well. And just, and you're training yourself in those moments to focus on the good, to focus on what's there rather than what's not there, which is always going to lead you to more of an abundance mindset.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yes. It's really training that, neurologic pathway to basically get more entrenched, to create more networks in your brain. And so that it becomes like a subconscious habit, right?
Big time.
Yeah.
And I've had to I don't know if I had to, but I did have help with that. I did some ketamine therapy, and I've done some different things like that have definitely changed my neural pathways. And I've noticed a difference in the last few years with that. So that has helped. I do not discount that. Like I'm in a much better place, and I don't ruminate the way that I used to, which I think my neural pathways had simply gotten in a rut, which is possible. So you just have to pay attention. Again, it's the same as noticing the food habits, but pay attention to when you're having those ruminating thoughts.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Stepping into your own awareness.
Absolutely.
One of the things that do you have something in that?
I was going to say, yes, the first step is basically becoming aware of your patterns.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how you have this window, which is in the now, right? If you are becoming aware in the moment of something that you're doing that you don't want to be doing, you have this short window where you can access that. And it's always in the moment.
I'm glad you said that, because I read a quote a long time ago that was, it's hardest to recognize the patterns that you're living when you're living them, and something like that. I'm butchering it, but you get the idea.
Yes.
And it's so true, because when you're living those patterns, it's very hard to step into your awareness. So if you can just get that little window, just that little glimpse into it, say, maybe this is something that I'm patterning.
Somebody once said, the inside of the jar can't read the label on the outside. So it's like you're swimming in water and you're wondering, where the water is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You don't know. Fish doesn't know he's in water.
No.
One of the beliefs that I read that, you were talking about was this idea of I've tried everything, the belief that stops people from succeeding. I want to touch on that a minute, because I just had a friend do this, and she was really feeling bad, feeling down about everything. And when I talked to her, she goes, I've literally tried everything. And I go, have you? I'm like, have you tried? And I started listing off things like getting out in nature. Have you tried meditating? Have you tried, I listed off things that are free and really, really simple. And she was like, no, I haven't. And I was like, okay. So don't tell yourself you've tried everything.
Yes.
Like, but so many people, you hear that. People, I think it's just a saying that rolls off our tongues. Like, I've tried everything. And it's like, have you?
Right. Have you really?
No. The answer's no. It's always no. Mm-mm.
Like, if you ask the universe, have I tried every single thing that exists out there in the universe? No, you haven't.
No.
Right? And that's something that trips people up. So working in the health space, I hear that a lot. But Ginger,
they've tried everything.
I've tried everything. I've gone to 5 different specialists, and I've tried to change my nutrition, but generally they haven't tried everything, right? Have you tried Chinese medicine? And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. But I think also with Chinese medicine and with alternative medicine in general, I hate to say this, but it's not as standardized as Western medicine, right? That's the beauty of Western medicine. You break a leg, you go to, any facility, like medical facility in the country, and they'll do approximately the same thing.
You pretty much know what you're going to get.
Exactly.
It's like a restaurant. Here's the menu. Here's what you're getting.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But with alternative medicine, the variability and the level of expertise and the education is going to be very different.
Well, like you're combining NLP and reprogramming the mindset, which is so crucial, and building these habits with this foundational Eastern medicine and nutrition.
Right. And so if they haven't tried everything, if they haven't tried me,
right. That's not everything.
Right. That's not everything,
right.
for example. But generally speaking, when somebody deals with a health issue, let's say somebody has, diarrhea and they don't know what it is, and they've gone to all the Western medical doctors and specialists. So what they have tried is all the Western medical doctors. They've tried the various specialists, gastroenterologists, they've tried maybe some alternative therapies that their Western medical doctor would has prescribed. They've done, they've basically tried all of those playbook items from Western medicine.
Right.
But they haven't.
Everything in that book.
Everything in that book.
Yeah.
And then they think, well, if I go to a more well-known doctor, if I go to a more highly educated Western medicine doctor, maybe they'll have something else. Mm-hmm. But what's good to know is that it's still from that same playbook. And so my invitation for people who have tried that playbook is to go to a different playbook, right? Chinese medicine's been around for thousands of years, and there have been so many amazing, smart Chinese medicine doctors who have contributed to this medicine, who have developed this medicine. There are different specialty fields that they have basically developed, these formulas for thousands of years with trial and error, right? The way they basically came up with a solution was they would try it out. If it worked, great. If it didn't work, maybe somebody died in that process, right? And so that's how it was developed. And it's a very, very different playbook because it's a more holistic view of your body, right? The body's like a tree. If the crown of the tree is going yellow, well, you can do spot treatment, or you can take a look at the roots or the environment, and you can address it in a more holistic way. Maybe the tree needs more water. Maybe there's something in the water that's not good. Maybe the tree needs more sun, but it's never a spot treatment in the crown of the tree that's going to eventually give them the, solution that's going to solve the tree. You got to address the whole tree and not just look at that one branch that is going yellow, right?
Yes.
Address the whole tree. There is alternative medicine. There is, all kinds of different therapies, NLP, right? Getting into the mental aspect of solving that problem.
So can we just tell people, don't say I've tried everything? Just cut that out.
Yes,
right?
Just cut that out.
How conscious are you of the things that you say and all the things that you say?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, like, do you ever catch yourself saying something and you're like, I should cut that out? Like, staying like real conscious, like if somebody is listening and thinks like, oh yeah, I have said that. Like I tried everything, cut that out.
Yes.
And then you can catch yourself in the moment, or even just saying something like, oh my God, I'm so dumb. I'm so dumb. Why'd I do that? Or whatever. Or, oh, I always make that mistake. Like catch yourself really quick.
Absolutely. I do that all the time.
You do?
Yes, I still do.
That's good.
Yes.
It's good. We have to catch ourselves.
We have to catch ourselves in the moment. And sometimes my husband will correct me and he'll say, oh, instead of saying this, why don't you say this? Basically, he's reframing my perspective about what I just said, right?
Can you think of one? Can you think of an example?
I'm so stupid. I just did this thing and I would say, I'm so stupid.
Oh my God. I would get on you if I heard you say that. Any of my friends that say that, I'm like, cut that shit out right now.
Right. And he'll say, no, are you really? I'm like, no, I can actually be smart. No, actually, I'm pretty smart. Mostly sometimes.
Get the word actually out of there.
Right. And so he'll just correct me and he'll invite me to come up with my own answer.
Lovely.
Yeah, and just reframe that perspective that I'm not really stupid. I just had a moment of saying something that, I just don't no longer resonate with. And that's it.
Yes, because you're human.
Yes.
And that said, it sounds like you're the type of person that gives yourself some grace around these things. Like, do you look back at, say, the weight gain when you first moved here and your own health struggles and those pills and stuff? Do you look back at that with gratitude? Are you able to look at that with grace, gratitude, all that?
Absolutely. I used to be so harsh to myself. And
how long ago is used to be? Like recent, 10 years? What are we talking about?
I think sometimes right now I can be harsh to myself, but I don't stay there anymore.
It's about how fast you can get out of it,
Exactly.
I think, because we're all human.
Exactly.
So I don't think we're going for perfection of thoughts or perfection of any of it.
Yes.
It's how fast can you snap out?
Yes. And the difference is that I just don't live there anymore, right?
Nice.
I don't spend years in that space anymore. I realize that, and then I move out of that space. And so, like you just said, it's how long you spend in that place, right? Yeah. And, that's also the difference between those that are successful and those that are not successful, right? The ones that are successful, according to the author of Brain Rules, John Medina, they make a mistake or they fail or they have this big setback and they get up fast and they try again and again and again. And so what that means is that they have a lot more shots to succeed. And so the likelihood of them succeeding actually increases significantly.
How fast can you get up?
How fast can you get up? How fast can you get over yourself? How fast can you process the failure? How fast can you forgive yourself? Can you learn from that and just not give up?
Yeah, and then you end up processing the failure into a stepping stone of your own success.
Yes, and that's how I view my past, right?
Beautiful.
In order for me to learn the lessons that I had to learn, I had to go through that process of failing, of, making these mistakes, feeling bad, because otherwise I wouldn't have been motivated to change.
I think part of that perspective too comes with age. Like
Yes.
the older we get, the more we're able to do that, and see it with some kind of hindsight perspective that's gracious toward ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't subscribe to the black and white thinking that I used to. Same with nutrition, right? I don't know if we have time to go into the most important nutrition principle.
Yeah, please. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes. In our intake questions, you have it in all caps too. The one most important nutrition principle. Please, I want to know.
Yes, because I really wanted to share that because there's such a huge debate about nutrition. What nutrition and what nutrition program or protocol is the best? Is it keto? Is it low carb? Is it vegan? And you brought that up early in our conversation as well.
Yeah, and there are people who build their entire platform off of one,
Right.
This is it. This is the way. And I'm like, I don't want to eat liver, whatever it is.
Yes, right. It doesn't resonate with everybody.
Right.
And so the most important nutrition principle that I have discovered is processed versus unprocessed. And when I say unprocessed, what I mean is not completely 100% unprocessed necessarily, but maybe just lightly processed. Like, some broccoli that's slightly steamed or, a fish that's lightly cooked, right? So I mean single item ingredients, and you can assemble them. Like you can take a piece of steak and you can take a couple of different vegetables and kind of cut them up and assemble them. And that would also be considered low processed, right?
Sure.
Kind of unprocessed.
But cooking, like making a nice meal with whole foods.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. And so that's unprocessed, right? So things like apples and vegetables and a piece of steak would be considered unprocessed. And it was a journey for me to actually figure that out. So the first place where I, started my career was I moved from Miami to Seattle. So there's a little town on the Kitsap Peninsula called Poulsbo, and one of the biggest clinics for Chinese medicine is there. And so I moved there, And, we would see hundreds and hundreds of patients every single week. And the main nutrition protocol that we used there was keto and low carb. And so we implemented that, and I've seen it implemented on, thousands of patients. And that worked pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I subscribed to that. And so for myself, I also ate very low carb and keto for many, many years. And I saw progress in my own health. And fast forward a couple of years later, I went to one of the historically well-known clinics for cancer therapy, alternative cancer therapy. It's called the Gerson Center in Tijuana, Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent 14 days at this clinic. And so the way they treat patients with nutrition is they subscribe to a vegan diet.
Mm-hmm.
It was low fat and very, very high carb, but unprocessed high carb. Things like potatoes, a little bit of rice, a lot of carrot juice and vegetable juice and fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a combination between a raw vegan diet and also cooked. It was mostly cooked, but there are some items that were raw.
Mm-hmm.
And very, very little oil, because oils essentially are also processed. They also occur in food, like avocados, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it was a very high carb diet versus what I knew from before, which was very low carb and
Mm-hmm.
almost keto. And here I had two conflicting nutrition ideas and I saw patients do well on both.
Mm-hmm.
And I scratched my head. I'm like, how is this possible that a high carb diet actually reverses a diabetic's, blood sugar issues? Because I saw that with my own eyes at that clinic. I met this woman that was able to get better glucose numbers by eating a high carb diet. And so what I realized was it's not the high carb or low carb or keto. It's actually the processed versus unprocessed that is the number one factor. And so today in my practice, I let my patients choose their nutrition, and I just help them, figure out what is going to work for them, what is going to resonate with them, and also what their body needs, right? And so sometimes we will go carnivore and sometimes we will go vegan. And I just teach them, hey, instead of eating French fries and drinking beer every day to be a vegan, why don't we go unprocessed? And I've learned that works.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also learned that, keto or carb can work very well as long as it's unprocessed.
Right.
They will heal their bodies.
How do you feel about like protein bars?
Well, I haven't found a protein bar that I love. There are some better ones than worse, better ones.
For sure.
Yes.
I have eaten them, and then lately, I would say in the last couple of months, just because I hadn't been feeling well, so really my diet got very unprocessed and very like kind of bare bones because my stomach was just jacked. I didn't feel good, and so found myself forcing myself to eat. So I was like, well, I might as well do something nutritious if I have to force myself. So I would eat, pretty well, and I cut those out, and then I really got to thinking about them, and I was like, I don't think these are good. And so I've just consciously not eaten them now. Yeah.
Yeah. So protein bars essentially are still processed.
They
right?
seem very processed. Yeah. It's like chocolate flavor, or whatever.
Right. So cacao in itself is very low processed, so it can be good. But if you add sugar to it, and a lot of protein bars do have some added sugar, and also like protein powder, right, which is essentially processed. And so I think somebody who wants to increase their protein, they would be better off eating, an organic, grass-fed, grass-finished piece of steak.
Yeah.
That is less processed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we also eat what the animal ate.
Yeah.
Which means...
What do you eat for quick protein?
So I don't do a whole lot of animal protein.
Okay.
I do some, like once a week or a couple of times a month, I will do a vegan protein powder. But generally, as I'm not 100% vegan. I still eat some fish, and I still use the carnivore hack because it's good for cravings. So I'll go through periods when I'll eat, a couple of meals of fish or chicken sometimes just to get my cravings to go down.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, what we eat at home is mostly vegan, low processed.
Oh, wow. Cool. So you don't worry too much about protein or anything like that.
Correct.
Ooh, I like that.
Correct.
I've been kind of like back and forth on that lately because I've been vegan and then I've been paleo.
Mm-hmm.
I've done some different things, which paleo can be a lot like a really unprocessed vegan, only you just throw in a little bit of meat.
Right.
So I like that personally. And I like potatoes. So I have to have potatoes, which we've talked about. So
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And, for those who are busy and they want to improve their health,
Mm-hmm.
fasting is really good. Water fasting.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about it.
So, I think I mentioned earlier, in my early 20s, I had a digestive issue.
Mm-hmm.
I had nausea, I had cramping, and I was at work and I was just holding my belly, and I had to excuse myself and just sit in the back room for hours.
Wow.
And I did my research at that time, and I discovered water fasting. And so I decided, well, right now I don't have health insurance. I am in college, and let's try the natural method. And so I said to myself, I am going to try this water fast for 3 days. If it doesn't work, I'm going to go to the doctor. And so I tried it out. Guess what happened on day 3?
What? You were cured.
My symptoms went away. Literally, the afternoon of the 3rd day, my cramping went away. My nausea went away, and I was sold. That's another big milestone in my healing process.
How hard was that to do? I've never done a water fast.
Well, when you have nausea, you don't feel like eating anyway.
That's kind of what I had in the last few weeks. Like my stomach was just.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I can give you a couple of tricks if you have nausea and cramping.
Yeah, go ahead.
So,
I'm better as of yesterday. So yay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So our digestive system likes warmth. So in Chinese medicine, we say a strong digestive system has a lot of fire, digestive prowess, basically ability to break down your foods.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I have patients who tell me, well, I had some digestive upset, so I went for a smoothie because I thought that's easy to digest. And oftentimes it will get worse because the cold will not allow for blood flow to, open up our circulation and do the healing, right? The delivery process of healing is basically happening through our cardiovascular system, through our blood. Your blood delivers all the nutrients, oxygen, white blood cells, which are essential for healing. So what we want to do is we want to open up circulation. And so something that's warm, like a hot soup, is going to be more powerful and can basically allow for your digestive system to heal. So, bone broth, hot tea, ginger tea to kind of open that circulation up.
I know. Isn't it great that your name is something healing?
Yes. Ginger is good for you.
Yes.
In small doses.
Mm-hmm. I love ginger. So yeah, I know. I thought that was kind of cool. No, those are really wonderful. And I didn't know that at all. I would have thought a smoothie was fine too.
Yes.
So,
So a hot smoothie could be good, but we got to be more cautious with colder smoothies. I think the reason why we are attracted to ice in our drinks and colder drinks is in the United States is not just because of the weather, right? It's because we're a more inflamed nation. One of the cardinal symptoms of inflammation is heat. So we kind of know intuitively that when we're hot, something cold is going to cool us down. And so it naturally feels good to have that cold drink, right? Because we feel hot. And
so what should we do instead? Have something warm?
We should actually address that inflammation.
Okay.
address the underlying inflammation with nutrition. You can do it with supplementation and herbal medicine. But just nutrition alone, it takes longer, right, to heal with just nutrition alone, because you can't laser focus on certain things with just nutrition alone versus Chinese herbs, for instance, right?
Ah, cool.
And so, yes, you can basically stop doing the things that are causing the inflammation, right? I consider that most chronic conditions comes from dietary excess. Too much salt, too much oil, too much sugar, too much processed foods, which has all three of them because it makes our food delicious. And then the addictive mind kicks in and we're hooked and we have more and more. And then there's weight gain. There are all these chronic conditions that occur, right? So dietary excess is basically a precursor to these chronic conditions.
So when we're functioning from a place of that inflammation and then drinking the cold smoothie, let's say, are you actually feeding that inflammation and making it continue or worse?
So it's going to depend on what's in your smoothie.
Ah, okay.
Right? So let's say you have a ton of sugar in your smoothie. You're using, I don't know, dates and sugar and...
Which it's highly likely that it's got a lot of sugar in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Most smoothie joints are going to put some kind of a sugar or sweetener into your...
Or just juice. Wouldn't that count if you have juice in there?
Yes.
Okay.
That would count. Like orange juice, for instance, right? And the problem is it's a simple processed carbohydrate, and it will basically register in our blood sugar relatively fast, right? And so sugar actually makes our cardiovascular system expand, our blood vessels expand, and it can cause more heat and inflammation. It can fuel that problem. However, if you have vegetables in there, green vegetables, that can actually be healing. You might feel cold after drinking a cold smoothie, especially if you're already running colds. But it can basically provide the nutrients for your body to heal. So you can counter that by adding a little bit of ginger to basically warm up your smoothie a little bit.
To get that heat going.
Yes. And so like every food has a temperature. Ginger is slightly warming for you. And that's why it's good for the digestive system, because the digestive system likes warmth, right? Whereas if you run cold, you cannot create balance in a body that's already cold by giving them something that's even more cold.
Makes sense.
Right? And so you want to establish balance in the body. So it's all about like knowing what's in your food, what's in these herbs, the different properties that it has, so that you know how to eat to balance out your body. And
it goes right back to that.
Yes,
balance.
And part of that is intuitive. It's actually intuitive. If you ask yourself, it's a hot summer day in Austin, it's probably over 100 degrees today, right? You go outside, you break a sweat, you feel hot. How does a watermelon sound to you?
Sounds fabulous.
Exactly. Because you intuitively know that a watermelon is going to cool you down. How does a hot soup with spices sound to you on a hot day? Weird, right?
Yeah.
It's counterintuitive. You're not going to feel like eating a hot soup.
Yeah.
Because your body knows, I'm already hot. Please don't make me hotter because it's taking me out of balance. So part of that is just tapping into your intuition and asking your higher self, what should I eat in this moment?
But if you're coming from an inflamed place and you don't realize it and you're hot and cooling it down, that's something to pay attention to. Like you've got to understand that distinction.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's important to know that distinction because you might do the wrong thing, right?
Right.
For example, if you're running super hot and your addictive monkey mind is speaking to you and it's saying, hey, I want something cold. Let's say I want a cold Coke.
I want a Slurpee. Yeah.
I want a Slurpee.
Yeah.
And let's say that person has cardiovascular issues and has a blocked artery. And what happens to something when it gets colder is that it constricts. So let's say they already have an 80% blocked artery and they're drinking an ice cold drink. Guess what can happen? That artery could
Just get smaller.
basically, yes, get smaller, constrict, and something could happen. A cardiovascular incident like a stroke or heart attack.
Damn. Okay. Pay
Yeah.
attention.
Yes. And so it's important to know, that you shouldn't be drinking. It's also not natural to drink ice drinks. They don't do that in Europe. We used to not have freezers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Justin, he just walked in out there somewhere, but he just told me the other day that back to processed foods, but that's interesting about the iced drinks, that he told me that is something like 50% of the foods that we're eating now weren't even around 50 years ago. Maybe it was higher than 50%. It was a lot. It was a way too high number.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think with more technology and ability to feed into people's addictive minds, there's also also innovation, right? Like creating products that look attractive but are not actually healthy for you necessarily.
Right.
The reason why we started this process of creating foods that are packaged is because we realized that, hey, now instead of being able to sell this potato only for this window of time before it goes bad, hey, if I make potato chips and add, salt and oil and preservatives and package it, I can actually prolong shelf life. I can ship it all across the world and make a lot more money than if I just sell the potato. Right? And so people are realizing that, this is a market. This is a niche. You can sell packaged foods because they're convenient. People want convenience. And so then there is more of an opportunity to create these products and sell them to people who are busy. Right?
Yeah.
Until they go so much into one extreme that they get sick, like myself. And then they're forced to look at what they're putting into their bodies and what that creates. Yeah.
Which maybe we need. Get forced to do it.
Yes.
So, yeah. And I feel like I've made a shift, which I'm really excited about. So I've made a shift into that. And so I'm going to just say, like, your number one is get unprocessed.
Yes.
Get unprocessed.
Unprocessed.
Which we hear. Eat whole foods.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Super simple.
Number one nutrition principle is get unprocessed.
Okay.
Whether you were vegan, vegetarian, low carb, or you love animal proteins, get as unprocessed as possible. Get the highest quality items as possible, which is how food used to be.
That's right.
It's real food.
It is real food. Well, so as we wrap up, is there anything else that we missed that you want to share before we go, or anything on your heart, or anything you even want to reiterate? Maybe whatever comes up for you that you don't want to miss saying before we go.
Yes. I do have a message for those who are struggling with health issues. Oftentimes I have people that come to me and they've basically, worked their way through the medical system. They've tried out a number of alternative medicines and therapies and modalities, and they are at a place where they want to give up. And so I would encourage them to continue going because they haven't reached the end yet, and to search until they find it. And I am happy to be a resource for those people as well. I might not have the answer for them, but I am happy to reach out to my community. And
are you just a true believer too that everyone can heal?
Yes.
That's cool.
I do. And not just from, physical symptoms, but also emotionally.
Because they go together too.
They do go together.
Yes.
Yes. And so I would encourage for people to continue looking until they find it and not give up, and keep getting back up quickly so that they can get what it is that they need to fulfill their potential. Because if they play it small, it doesn't serve the world.
That's right. And your own health struggles not only served you and this road, but they also gave you a deeper compassion and understanding for what someone else is going through.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I feel like I was so close to giving up myself. I spent hours and hours trying to find a solution, trying to find hope, reaching out to my network. And there are a lot of people out there that want to help you, right? And so you don't have to deal with it by yourself. You can reach out to people. You can reach out to your network. You can reach out to strangers on Instagram.
That's such a good thing to remember too, because there are so many times that we are more than happy to help people. But then when we need help, we can feel like a burden.
Yes.
And it's important to remember that you're not a burden. Tune into those times when you've wanted to help people and know that that's still out there.
Yes, people want to help.
Mm-hmm.
And so don't deny them of that blessing to help you.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you know what? You have helped so much today.
Yay!
I have loved this conversation. I feel like it aligned with what I need in my own life. And that's always just like, that makes me feel just so excited and even more excited. And so it's things that I'm definitely going to be applying myself. So I'm so excited. Can you share with everyone how they could find you, how they could possibly work with you, how they can connect on your Insta? And I'm going to put everything in the show notes.
Yes, I am on Insta. I'm kind of a newbie on Insta, but my name is Empowered by Ginger. You can find me on my website. It's empoweredbodyclub.com. I also have recently started a YouTube channel. It's Empowered Body Club. And so those are the three main ways for you to find me. Instagram, website,
I love that.
And YouTube.
Wonderful. I'll have all those in there in the show notes, and everyone should follow you and keep connecting and support your YouTube. I highly encourage it. And I just think you have such a wonderful and balanced and unextreme way of looking at this. And it seems so attainable, just pay attention, get aware, build the habits, pay attention to your neural programming, reprogram yourself if you need it, and eat unprocessed foods.
Yes, it's figure-outable, guys.
There you go. It is figure-outable. Thank you so much, Ginger Hansen, for being here. Remember to follow her on Instagram at Empowered by Ginger, and go to Empowered Body Club and their YouTube as well, which I believe on your website, there's a link to the YouTube. Yes?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again for being here. I'm so grateful. And I got so much out of it. And thank you to all the listeners who are here today. And thank you to Ibble. We were filming in a new studio today. If you didn't notice, we're not in my house. And thank you to Ibble. And thank you to Jude over there. Thank you, sir. And we were super grateful to have this absolutely beautiful space today. And I'm grateful that you're here. And remember, it's all figure-outable. Just like Ginger said, no matter what it is, that's why we're here, to figure it out. That's why I'm sharing my voice all the time, to help us figure it out a little bit faster and a little bit more efficiently so we can really enjoy life, because that's what it's all about. So thank you so much for being here. Share it with a friend if you feel called. If you thought of anybody today, it matters. Share it with a friend. Amplify this, because it's all good stuff that we can apply to our lives, and we can help somebody just a little bit, or maybe have a conversation around it and open some things up that can surprise us in life. So thank you again, Ginger. And thank you to Ibble. And thank you to you for being here. I feel in my heart, I'm like, get a little twinge of heartgasm if you haven't listened to that episode about it. I talk all about it, but I can still access that. And I'm just so grateful to be here, and so grateful to be sitting here in front of a mic and on this show. So if you want to connect further with me, follow me at Real Amy Edwards on Instagram, The Magic Babe on TikTok, or on my YouTube, The Amy Edwards Show. I'm so happy you're here. So thank you so much. Rate, review, subscribe, all those good things. Go sign up for my newsletter, which is unobtrusive and informative, and shares links to all these good people and all these good things coming out. It's at amyedwards.com. I love you so much. Thanks again to Ibble for the support, and thank you for being here. Have an absolutely beautiful, magnificent day, and it is all figure-outable.
It is all figure-outable, guys.
Yes. This has been the Amy Edwards Show. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe.
And thank you so much for being here. Sign up for our newsletter at amyedwards.com.